Hey guys, it's Chris with History Loves Company, and I'm here with
Coleman Yoakum, Executive Director at Micah 6 Community.
So, Coleman, what exactly is the Micah 6 community? What sort of projects fall underneath that community?
Sure. So we moved to Pontiac 10 years ago, me and a group of friends, found a neighborhood that needed good neighbors, started asking people, what can we do? Like, what's a space that we could work in? What's an area we can serve? And something that kept coming up over and over again was food. So, our neighborhood's a mile and a half from the nearest grocery store. 40% of my neighbors don't have a car. Then we've got a ton of our neighbors who are on disability and have some sort of like mobility issues. And so getting access to healthy food was really difficult. And so we started growing food, and we just kind of added space over time. Right now we're growing 1.5 acres of food every year with 2 greenhouses, getting ready to build our 3rd greenhouse. And just, growing that food, handing as much of it out as we can for free to people in our neighborhood. And then whatever we can't hand out goes to a vegetable store that we own over on West Huron, that sells, so that we can make a little bit of money and keep going.
Okay. And the name of that vegetable store is
Sprouts. Fresh food store.
Nice. So now you're talking about this community. Where exactly is this community that you're referring to? What are the boundaries of the Micah 6 community?
Sure. So we're in West Pontiac. If you want to get real specific, we are Census Tract 1420.
Tract 1420, guys. Look it up.
So that is, Telegraph to Johnson, Elizabeth Lake to Huron is kind of our space. So not far from the corner of M59 and Telegraph.
Okay. So it's just outside the Indian Village neighborhood then?
Yes. Yeah. One block east.
Perfect. Good reference point there. So within that community, I think there lies an old elementary school, possibly by the name of Webster Elementary. Is that correct?
Yeah. So Webster, beautiful elementary school, was built in 1920, opened for the 21-22 school year, closed in 2006, and has been sitting there vacant since then. When we moved in 2012, just sitting across the street, and we said, man, I really hope somebody does something with that one day. And the universe laughed and said, no, that's going to be you. So we bought the building in the end of 2016 and have been doing the slow roll of figuring out first what we were going to do with it. We did a big neighborhood survey, asked people what they wanted to see happen with the building. Talked about, we heard a lot about a community center. That community centers are always in the conversation in what to do in Pontiac and sort of how to enhance and improve the quality of life here. And so we said, okay, community center. But we figured out pretty quickly that means something different to everyone. And so, we had to go back to our neighbors over and over again with surveys and questions and clarifying questions to really nail down sort of what our neighbors wanted. We gave them, we talked to all sorts of services. What would you utilize if it was in that building? What would you, what do you think this neighborhood needs most? What's something that you would use or you would recommend somebody else would use? And my favorite, we got weird answers like urban bird watching, low-cost dog grooming. We got, the same amount of people were like, we want a marijuana dispensary and we don't want a marijuana dispensary.
But the urban bird watching, that is in fact something that will be happening, correct?
We can find somebody to host an urban bird watching class.
This sounds pretty incredible to me. I'm definitely intrigued. So if urban bird watching does become a thing, fill me in. I'd like to see what that's all about.
Sounds good. So we once we kind of figured out what all of our neighbors, kind of were wanting or hoping for in a community center, then we were able to go out to organizations and say, we've got hard data from our neighbors that say they want what you do. And so if we renovate this building into, a usable space again, would you want to move in and be a tenant and offer those services there? And so today we have 100% of our space committed. With 6 organizations on a waiting list.
So wait, Webster Elementary School is in fact going to become a community center? That's what you're saying here?
Yes. Yep. We have 2 wings that we're rushing on to get those done by August of 23. And the rest, everybody else will move in January of 24.
Wow, that's pretty freaking incredible. So you've got all the spaces allocated for, and throw us a list of some of the brands or companies that are moving in there.
ULSA is going to be moving in and putting 6 Head Start classrooms in that building. Honor Community Health is looking at putting in a walk-in clinic with that building, tied in with their residency program. So as they're training doctors and future medical professionals, it's in a community setting. where there's a lot of other things going on and people coming in for different services, not just a hospital. So they're going to be putting in a walk-in clinic. Sprout, our vegetable store, is going to move into that building. We're working with Smart because we're right on M59, right? We have 3 bus stops in front of that building that are all muddy, uncovered spots on the side of the road. And in our conversations with neighbors, Joe and Pam, and these people were going like, oh yeah, March is when I just get pneumonia. Yeah. Like every year, like that's when I get pneumonia because I'm standing outside waiting on the bus in the cold and in the rain. So consolidating those 3 bus stops, bringing them inside into an indoor transportation terminal where somebody can be sitting in the heat or, the air conditioning and look at a monitor, see when their bus is coming. Some of our smaller organizations can have vending machines in there that they're generating revenue off of. So that's exciting. We've got a commercial kitchen in that building that we're going to rent out to food entrepreneurs. We just got done with this big kitchen meeting the other day. You learn the things that I've learned in doing this. Like, I'm not a developer, I'm a social worker. And so learning about buildings has been pretty wild. So that's coming in. We've got an indoor basketball gym. 79% of people who took our community survey said the kids need a place to play basketball in the winter. So an indoor gym. So we're really passionate about keeping that gym. Who else has come in? Accent Pontiac that does music programming for a lot of Pontiac public schools. Kaleo Kids, which is an inner city dance program where they blend inner city and suburban kids into a dance and music program together. So we got a pretty sweet lineup of really great organizations that are going to do a lot for people in that neighborhood. Nice.
That's incredible. I can't wait to see it. I mean, that's super close to my neighborhood as well. So somewhere that I will definitely be checking out once that opens up. Something that you actually went through pretty recently was getting that building on the National Register of Historic Places. Is that true?
Yes. Yeah. It is on. We were approved. The State Historic Preservation Office approved our application January 28th.
Wow.
And so we're on.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's something that I wanted to chat with you a little bit about. Obviously, with History Loves Company, I mean, we're all about historic homes, the Historic District Commission, and what that entails, what a home has to meet to get onto this list, and having somebody who just recently went through that experience that we're able to chat with about this is pretty cool. So why don't you tell us a little bit about what that looked like from start to finish to get on that list?
So first of all, Webster's a pretty incredible building. It is, there are reasons, and the State Historic Preservation Office and the Department of Interior have, a lot of questions. Why do you think this building should be historical? What, did it see something interesting historically? Did it influence architecture in some way? What's the story? And basically, just like everything else, you have to craft a story for why this thing deserves consideration.
This sounds very familiar. We just did a video a couple of weeks ago that sounded pretty much exactly like what you just said. I mean, what significant piece of history can you relate this to, whether it's a person, an event, or what it may be? So what sort of story were you able to craft with Webster?
So our architecture firm is CBI Designs. They are wonderful people, but they definitely said when we kind of started having the historical conversation, we've never done an application, so let's bring in a firm that does applications. And so we worked with Hawkins Burns, which is a great studio, great folks who really know what they're doing. And it feels a lot like, creative storytelling and, a lot of mining. Like I had to go for a week, to just sit in the archives in Lansing, the state archives, and you're digging through stuff and you're calling all the time and going, hey, I found this piece of information. Is this a thing? Is this useful? Is this an angle that's good? And so, we really had to focus on one, but there were 2 really interesting stories associated with this building. One is the guy that built the building was an absolute trip. This guy only gets jobs in the world before the internet. He was out of Chicago. The city, as it was expanding that way, hired him to come in and build this building. But he had just been fired from Chicago public schools for building buildings that were too ornate and kept going over budget. And so he comes to Michigan. They say, here's this building. You have $180,000 to build it. And he immediately is over budget and late and behind and this and that and the other. And so, and he's like, I want to put skylights in every classroom. And I want all the bathrooms are built out of red granite quarried from North Carolina, and brought up here. And so by the time he was done, He had spent $336,000 on this building. So
that's pretty close to the budget, though, right? 183, 330.
Yeah. So he gets fired. He goes to Columbus, Ohio, builds some buildings there. Gets fired from going over budget. Cleveland does the same thing. Comes back, builds the education building at U of M. Gets fired from there. Eventually, finally, no one will hire this guy again. And so then he starts writing books about how to design education buildings. And so I tell people all the time, if you are bad enough at your job, eventually you can write books about how to do it.
You're not wrong. I've seen plenty of people do it.
But his books were sort of the textbooks for how to design education buildings for like the next 40 years. And so we've got a very beautiful case study that was sort of one of his first buildings, that he used as sort of his influence for how he taught other people how to do it. And so significant contribution to architecture. The other great story is that Webster was a very intense focus of the lawsuit in 1971, the NAACP versus the Pontiac School Board, that ultimately brought about busing in the city, and that ultimately brought about protests, and the Ku Klux Klan showed up and burned down our bus depot, and a lady named Irene McCabe led a march on Washington that started from Pontiac, and that the lawsuit that sort of ignited all of that had Webster at its center, because Webster was a school for white children, and the disparities in education quality were enormous. That Webster, every classroom had a piano. You couldn't be a teacher at Webster unless you had a piano or could play piano. And then you've got, whenever Webster got new textbooks, they would send their old ones to Bethune, which was the black school on the south side of town. And that, it played a major role in school integration in Pontiac, but also in Michigan, and the larger story of school integration. If you visit the Integration Museum in Little Rock, Arkansas, there is a wall-sized picture of protests in Pontiac, Michigan.
Okay.
And there's not a place in Pontiac that sort of recognizes that history. A lot of the schools that were involved in busing have been demolished.
Okay.
And so we thought it was a really important element to the story of Pontiac, but also the larger story of school integration, to include that story in sort of the broader picture. And so those were the two criteria that we were working with to get on the registry.
I'm going to guess you went with a little bit of favor into the second one?
So this is...
That's my guess.
That is where my favor was. Just like anywhere else, you have firms that are a little more go-get-em and firms that are a little more conservative. And our firm said we can definitely get in on architecture, so let's go that way.
Okay, so you went with the first story then.
Mm-hmm.
Super interesting, because it's a guy that proved that he could win by failing.
Yes.
Which is super intriguing.
Yeah.
I think a lesson for all of us, really.
Yeah.
But the second story you told, though, that's pretty incredible.
That's the one that's closest to my heart.
Yeah,
for sure.
To see Webster Elementary tied to our past in such a significant way like that is pretty incredible.
And one of the commissioners at the State Historic Preservation Office meeting, she says, the story of this building is, exclusivity and racism and an insular sort of mindset. And how redemptive for this to be turned into an asset for the whole community. Yeah. And so, that's the story that's much more interesting to me.
Yeah.
But once you're on the registry, no one really cares what your criteria was.
Yeah,
So
not at all. You can paint the picture however you see fit.
Exactly.
Moving forward. But
the green plaque on the side of the road is not going to say anything about the unique design and symmetry of the building.
Yeah, it's very ornate architecture.
Yes, it's going to be the building and the story.
That's pretty incredible. Just seeing such a powerful story from the past like that, tie into it and really tie into Webster Community Center. Will that be the name for it?
Yes.
Okay.
So a lot of, this was in that survey, we asked, do you care about the building? Because anybody who does restoration work will tell you it is much cheaper to demolish and build something new than it is to refurbish. And so, that was kind of one of our questions, is how attached are we to this building? And we heard from our community, 85% of the people who took the survey said, keep the building. Yeah. Don't demolish, don't build something new, keep the building. And so a lot of people still have very fond memories of that building and are very attached to it. And so, keep the building, restore the building. We want it to look like it looked when people went to school there, but also keep the name.
Yeah, that's incredible. I mean, we went in there. It's probably been a little over a year now since last time I was in there. The basement was filled with water. Yeah. I mean, it wasn't much to be seen, but I know over the summer I had seen some trucks there pumping out the water, so I'm sure the basement has now been pumped dry.
Basement is dry.
What other work have you guys done so far?
So the basement's dry. You learn, like I said, I've learned so much just in how this has gone. There were no blueprints for the building. Didn't exist. They got thrown away at some point, and
even after your weeks of time spent in the state archives?
Not in the archives. They would have been in the possession of the Pontiac School Board. The prevailing opinion is that in order to make it difficult to turn these buildings into charter schools, they were all probably destroyed. Okay. And so, we got to watch as the architects came through with like this little thing that sits on something that looks like a teacher cart, and they just roll it around the building. And it's shooting lasers everywhere all the time, and it like creates you a drawing like within 1/3 of an inch or something like that.
Wow!
And it took a couple of hours, which is wild. So we got that drawing. So our architecture drawings are full set, are 100% set. Will be done this month,
nice.
Which is pretty cool. We start remediation this month as well. So we have an underground fuel tank we have to pull out. We start blasting off all the lead paint and scraping off things like that. We got to clean up the additional boiler building that's out behind. So all that stuff, we got a $425,000 grant from Eagle to start doing all that work. So that's really exciting. And then work starts this summer.
Nice. So it's going to be an exciting year for Webster Elementary / Community Center moving forward.
Yes.
And now there was something you mentioned previously, your guys' gardens. Now those are actually done on Webster Elementary grounds as well, correct? Right behind the school?
So the gardens are, when we bought the school, that's where we put our 2 greenhouses. And where we're getting ready to build our 3rd. And we're, doing really cool stuff right now, working with rainwater collection and pulling water off of the roof of that building when it rains and storing it underground and being able to use that to water the gardens and things like that. And, storm catchment, water catchment and things like that to sort of create sort of this full loop for a lot of these items and a lot of these things that would normally go to waste or go down the drain to be repurposed for the garden.
That's incredible. And then, so as far as the historic district goes, what sort of benefits are you going to be able to take advantage of because of this new designation?
Sure. So we, it is not something to take lightly, whether or not you do, a historic designation or not, because it comes with a lot of rules, right? You can't, there's things you can't change and things they want you to leave the same. And especially because we went with a focus on architecture, you can't get on the list because of architecture and then go through and change a lot of things about the architecture. So
can't rip off the entire front of the building, put a facade in place.
No, they get really weird about stuff like that. So we laugh about a new facade, but it's also like make sure you can't see the air conditioning unit on the roof from the street.
Yeah.
So it's like weird placement for all these things, like line of sight and math that I never paid attention to.
Essentially, anything that changes the appearance from the road is a big no-no.
And then you get into like arm wrestling with historic versus ADA, and like we were like, oh, we need to put a ramp here, and they're like, you cannot put a ramp there because it alters the symmetry of the building. And they said you can only put a ramp here if you also put a ramp on this side. And we're like, but that's 3 feet away. And they're like, yeah, gotta do it.
Symmetry. So you guys literally break out the table, and ADA and Historic District Commission both throw out their guns and see who prevails.
Yeah. So with one of the big reasons that we decided to do it was because it opens up to historical tax credits from the city, or not from the city, from the state. That there's a pot of funds from the state, but also the Department of Interior at the federal level that fund the restoration of historic buildings. And so that was a pretty big reason we decided to do what we wanted to do. And we also knew already that we wanted to leave it historical because of the responses that we gotten from the community. So it was just a pretty natural fit for us to do it. But it is a lot of work. It's expensive. It was an expensive process. Somebody, called and, gave me an earful and was like, I can't believe you're doing this. You're just doing this to get money. It's like, you have no idea how much money we spent on it. Like, and it's a wash, really. I mean, it is, with the things that they give us to fix, glass ceiling on the gym. We need you to leave this kind of wood like this. You can't do this small alteration that you want to do. The number of meetings that we had to talk about whether or not we could put a window on a room that was in the middle of the building. Just like this stuff is all expensive and it takes a lot. And you have to really decide that it is part of the vision that you're carrying into whatever project you're doing. But it definitely fit for us.
Awesome. That's good to hear. I mean, I'm glad that you guys didn't just, demolish the building and build a new community center and lose a piece of cool architectural significance like that. I mean, I'm all for whatever building may be down here in Pontiac that, has stood the test of time to continue standing. And I think it's such a shame that so many people are so quick to eliminate, blight, and or bulldoze buildings that could have had historic value just because it's easier and more affordable in that sort of direction. So you also have a pretty big event coming up. I think it's this Friday?
It is Friday. So we've never had a gala.
What's a gala, Coleman?
So it's a big fancy party. So here's how this happened: is
like suit and tie, get all dressed up.
So I didn't even know until I planned this that there are so many shades of formal.
Okay.
Well, so people are like, what are you wearing? I was like, a suit. They're like, not a tux? I'm like, no. Why would I wear it? No, I'm going to be wearing a suit. Okay, black. No, it's gray. It's what color suit? Like it's the color suit that I own, which is gray. So it's relatively casual. I don't know. I never wear a suit. Is that casual? So we have to figure out this out. So anyway, I'm wearing a gray suit. Wear whatever you like. Not whatever you want to wear. Don't show up in your pajama pants. But people get really
Coleman said I could.
Really weird about anyway. So we're doing that. We had a couple foundations who said we really like to give around large marquee events, and so you should have a large marquee event, and that's where we'll support. I said okay, sounds great. So we planned. At first I said what's a large marquee event, and they said something like a gala, and I was like we've never had a gala. I said, well, if you want our support, you should have a gala. So we planned this whole gala. And then that foundation said, actually, COVID's running a little long, so we're actually not going to support this round. It's like, oh, cool. So I'm having a big, expensive party for not your support. So thanks. But we'll have a lot of friends there, a lot of people who are coming to learn more about the project, a lot of people who, are passionate about kids and the arts and health and wellness and sort of all the things that are going to be going on in that building. People who love the city of Pontiac, people who are rooting for the progress that it's making, and so it ends up. So we planned this so that we could try and get a giant check from a foundation. That didn't work out, but it's going to be a pretty fun night with all my friends. Yeah. So I'm really looking forward to it.
So that's this Friday,
the 25th, day after my birthday. If you haven't thought about what you're getting me, you can buy yourself a ticket to the gala.
And where is that going to be located?
So it's going to be at the Strand. Strand Theater, right downtown Pontiac, 12 North Saginaw. Is also a beautiful historic building that got saved, not demolished, here in the city. So that's where it's going to be. So it starts at 7 o'clock on Friday night.
Can people buy tickets at the door, or do they have to purchase in advance?
Please don't. You can. I'll never turn down your money. But please do not wait until the door to buy your ticket. There is.
With that being said, can we tell them where they can buy those tickets?
WebsterCommunity.org.
Okay.
So there's a big banner at the top that says First Gala Ever, and you can click on that and find your tickets there.
It's pretty easy to find. I was able to find it this morning, and I was still half asleep. And also on that website, you can find out some of kind of the process that Coleman's gone through with Webster Elementary School and kind of transforming it over to the community center. So.
There's a blog there that I'm not good at updating. There's lots of fun pictures. You get to learn about all of our tenants, which is really the most exciting part of this whole thing.
So where do you see yourself with the whole Mica 6 community and Webster Community Center in, say, the next 5 years?
5 years from now, we also own Emerson Elementary School. And so that is a large building, northeast corner of town. That project is going to be probably a smaller version of what we're doing at Webster. Okay. A couple of very intentional community organizations. But the plan is that we're taking that playground and turning it into a tiny home village with 25 tiny homes.
High five, middle of take on that.
Yeah. So the plan there is that it's a blend of owners and renters who are living in that tiny home village and accessing a couple of services that are in the adjacent building. That's what we're doing.
That sounds incredible. So, I mean, obviously you guys can see that this guy has a heart of gold. And I've watched him help a tremendous amount of people over the years. And I mean, what he's doing for the Pontiac, the city of Pontiac and his community is absolutely incredible. I mean, I see these guys on the side of the road cleaning up the streets of Pontiac, like multiple times every year. Pretty impressive what he's doing, both around his neighborhood and the city of Pontiac, as a whole. So I'd like to thank you for being here today, man. It's pretty cool what you're doing in the city. And, you know, I wish there was more people like you that could help get things rolling like this.
We just gotta get them here.
Yeah. So we'll start with the gala.
Yeah.
7 o'clock, Strand Theater, Friday. The 25th,
night.
the day after Coleman's birthday. Bring him a birthday present, please.
Big 3-5. Turn 35.
So, with that being said, guys, remember, every home is a story. Let's discover yours.